Episode 6, The Stockade. Section 1. While Jim was ashore. The doctor now tells the story. This project was prepared by Brewer Rasul Sharif, teaching at Safin High School. It was about 1:30 when the two boats went ashore from the Hispaniola, and the captain, the squire, and I were talking in the cabin. Down came Hunter, who was one of the honest men, and he told us that Jim Hawkins had got into one of the boats and gone ashore with the other men. We trusted him, but we were worried about his safety. After a while, Hunter and I decided to take another rowing boat and go ashore in order to explore. The first two boats had gone far to the right, but Hunter and I came straight in the direction of a stockade which we had seen on the treasure map. There was a man waiting in each of the boats on the shore. They saw us, but did nothing. When we landed, I jumped out holding 2 loaded pistols and ran into the trees. I had not gone more than 100 yards when I came to an open area and saw the stockade. There was a little hill that had a freshwater spring coming out of it. A strong wooden house, which was big enough to hold about 20 people, had been built by this spring. Each wall had several holes in it so that muskets could be fired from inside. All around, a wide space had been cleared, and then the stockade was completed by a tall fence. With its fresh water and strong walls, the stockade would be the best place for us to stay. Suddenly, from across the island, there came the terrible cry of a dying man. I made my decision in a moment, ran towards the shore, and jumped into the boat. We were soon on board the Hispaniola again, where everyone was frightened and worried. I told the captain my idea, and we made a plan. We gave old Redruth 3 or 4 loaded muskets and left him on the ship to watch the 6 seamen that we did not trust. Then we started filling the boat with supplies: gunpowder, muskets, bags of biscuits, small barrels of meat and brandy, and of course, my medicine chest. Second trip. First trip of loading supplies. As we rowed to the shore, one of the seamen much further up the beach saw us and ran into the woods. We unloaded the supplies and left Joyce, who was another honest man, to look after the supplies. Hunter and I returned for a second load. The reason why we risked a second trip was that, though the majority of the crew were on the island, not one of them had a gun. Third trip, second trip of loading supplies. When we had unloaded after the second trip, Hunter and Joyce stayed ashore and I rowed as fast as I could back to the Hispaniola. Then the squire, Captain Smollett, Redruth, myself and one other sailor, Abraham Gray, climbed into the boat. Fourth trip. Third trip of loading supplies. This third trip was dangerous. There were too many men, and we were also carrying another load of supplies. The sea had become rougher and several times some water came over the side of the boat. Suddenly, the captain said, "Look behind us! The gun!" The 5 men left on board were preparing to fire the cannon. We had forgotten all about this big, powerful gun. "Israel was Flint's gunner," said Gray, with fear in his voice. Trelawney, who was the best of us with a gun, loaded his musket. We stopped rowing, then he took aim and fired. Just at that moment, Israel Hands, who had been loading the gun, bent down. The shot flew past him and hit one of the other men on deck. Then we heard shouting from the ship and also from the shore, where we could now see the other pirates coming out of the woods. It was not long until a shot from the cannon fell right by our boat, and she began to sink. Luckily, we were not far from the shore. As we walked through the waves and up onto the beach, our poor boat and about half of our powder and supplies lay underwater behind us. To make things worse, we could now hear shouting coming from the woods nearby.